Hi, this is Terry. I'm here to do a demonstration. The Canberra area visual artists asked me to demo my use of inks and how I make my drawings and the process that I use when creating them. So I hope you enjoy it. I guess we could start off with the materials that I use when I'm making a drawing. Usually I use 140-pound watercolor paper. Sometimes I use hot press, which has a really smooth finish, and other times I use cold press, which is a slightly rougher finish. I don't particularly like the rough paper because it's just too rough for the ink pens that I use. But it's great if you are doing heavy washes of ink and water paint. So for the drawings, I usually start off my drawings with a 2B pencil. I like the 2B because it's soft, and yeah, that's the pencil that I use, and I usually draw in the main components of my drawing first, and then when I am ready to fill in with inks, I like to use a Sharpie pen for the heavy outlining, and sometimes for filling in large areas of black. It gives a good deep coverage. And then for the fine liners, my favorite is the Rotring Tiki Graphic pen. These are really hard to find. I'm not sure if they've been discontinued or not. Hope not. They give a really smooth, wet ink application, and it dries nicely. You just have to be careful to work in the direction that you write. So if you're right-handed, work from left to right so that you don't smudge it across the page. I don't always follow my own rules, and sometimes I end up smudging, but that's okay. You can always go back and fix things. Another pen I like to use is the Staedtler fine liner or pigment liner. This is a permanent pen as well, waterproof. I use the 0.2 and sometimes the 0.05 for really small fine lines. The 0.2 is my favorite one. It has a lovely small line, and like I said, it's permanent. You have to be really careful with pens because not all of them are permanent, and I found that out when I first started drawing with ink pens, and some of the pens I used weren't permanent, and when you put them on, they would look really nice, and then after a while the ink would completely fade, and it's really disappointing. So be really careful. All the pens that I'm showing you today are permanent, and I like to use a white pen called a Sakura Jelly Roll. This is great for adding details for highlights, and also it helps if you need to make a small correction. They come in different sizes. I like the thicker ones, the 0.08 or the 1.0. They're the two that I prefer. They do come in smaller sizes. I also use these pens are quite popular as well, micron pens, and this one is a 0.4. I have 1.0s. It's nice to vary the size of your pen. Like I said, it gives a better sense of depth and detail to your work. It adds different dimension. And finally, I use Pro Marker. In all the different grays, they have lots of different tones, usually from 1 to 5, and they have warm gray, cool gray, ice gray, and I like to add these for shading and depth, and the gray works well with the black and white ink. Sometimes I use them in color as well if I feel like I want a specific bit of attention drawn to something in the picture. But I usually use the grays, and I usually use the 1, 3, and 5 of the series. Sometimes I will use all 5 of them, but usually I just stick to 3 different variations. And as for the process, when I start a drawing, I usually have a concept or a main focus in mind of what the main components of the drawing are going to be, and I sketch those in first. And when I'm happy with the sketch, then I start inking it in, and I work in ink drawings from the very foreground backwards. So I will do all the front things that I want, I do them first, so that the layers behind it won't interfere. And it's the opposite I do when I'm working with ink paint. They work from the background to the foreground. So for example, with the ink paints, I would lay in a wash for the sky if it's like a landscape scene, and I'll do that first, and then work forward until the very front top details. So when I'm working with the drawings, I have a set of patterns that I like to use, and you will see them often repeated in different drawings of mine. With the objects in the foreground, I usually like to try and make some bit of good detail in it. So if, for example, if it's a bird, then I like to put in all the lines of the feathers, and then when I'm filling in blocks around it for background, for example, often these can be more abstract patterns, like swirly lines, or little gravelly stones, or a little bunch of flowers, or sometimes a geometric pattern. But you find what you like making, and a lot of people might think it's tedious and repetitive to just keep doing the same thing over and over, but if you do it, it actually makes a nice finish, to a nice effect to the drawing, and if you enjoy it, it's even better. That's probably the part that I enjoy the most, is the adding in the small details. I know that the stippling one with the tiny dots, if you're using a really tiny pen and it's a big area, it can seem very daunting and like a huge task, but it is worth it, and if you enjoy it, it does make it better. If you don't enjoy it, don't bother doing it, because that's no fun, and nobody wants to make art that they don't enjoy doing. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the rest of the demo.